Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Sunday evening lesson. We are going to now cover Judges chapters 17 and 18 this evening. We've finished Samson, who is really the last judge that the book covers too much. He's not the last judge. Samuel is actually the last judge. We don't read about Samuel in the book of Judges. So we're going to take a look at Judges 17 and 18 today, and then 19 next week, Lord willing. And we will conclude the book of Judges here within probably sometime in December, early December, before we move on to the next topic that we're going to cover. And so what we see here, things are just going from bad to worse in Israel in these chapters. Let's just go ahead and read what's going on. Chapter 17 and 18 are really one unit. It's kind of lengthy, but it's really just one story. In chapter 17 it says, there is a man from the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. All right, so he is a descendant of Joseph because he's from Ephraim. Ephraim and Manasseh were the two tribes that descended from Joseph. Joseph was the only one that was represented twice. If you ever wonder why is there no tribe of Joseph, it's because he received the double portion that belonged to the oldest son, and therefore he's represented two times in the tribes. So Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim later becomes a dominant tribe, and much later on in history, the nation of Israel will actually be called Ephraim by many people before they fall to Assyria. But anyway, we're already starting to see a lot of trouble here, and this is likely something that's written about because it's going to cause problems down the road. And this man Micah, he said to his mother, we don't get a lot of details, but he says to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse, and also spoke it in my ears, behold, the silver is with me, I took it. So that's a substantial amount of money that this young man stole from his mother, and she knew about it. She didn't know where it went, and she uttered a curse because of it. She was very upset and spoke it in his ears. He fesses up, says, I'm the one that took it. Here it is. And his mother said, blessed be my son by the Lord. Now there's a lot of confusing things here. When we start reading this, we're going to wonder, are they really talking about the Lord, or are they using the Lord's name and placing it on somebody else, or are they just utterly confused as to who the Lord actually is? And he restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother in verse 3. And his mother said, I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a carved image and a metal image. Now therefore I will restore it to you. Okay, so all kinds of craziness going on here. I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son to do what? She's dedicating it to the Lord to make an image, a carved and a metal image, which is against the first two commandments that Moses was given to give to the people in Exodus chapter 20. Don't make a carved image. Don't have any gods before me. Those two things. And here she is dedicating her money that the Lord had blessed her with and dedicated to the Lord by carving an image. That's how confusing people can get, or how confused people can get. We must not think that it doesn't happen to us, because sometimes it does. We might see with clarity the sins and the utter confusion within the lives of other people that we read about and even watch, but sometimes we don't see the confusion and the contradictions within ourselves. So we must always be mindful that those may be there. It says in verse 4, so when he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to the silversmith, who made it into a carved and metal image, and it was in the house of Micah. Now, this is the man that had stolen the money from his mother. And Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household gods. Okay, so an ephod is a priestly garment. It's what the priest wears. The high priest, in fact, what he wears to show his service and his right of authority. And it says one of his sons, who became his priest. So he's making gods, and he makes an ephod. He steals money, and he ordained one of his sons to become the priest of his gods. Now notice what verse 6 says. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. That's going to be the theme. It's really the theme throughout Judges. We see already here that the author is looking back and seeing that if they just had a king that would have enforced the law, these things would not have happened. It says in verse 7, now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. So he takes a trip up to Ephraim, but he's from Judah. He's a Levite, but he's from Judah. It says, and the man departed from the town of Bethlehem in Judah to sojourn where he could find a place. And as he journeyed, he came to a hill country in Ephraim, to the house of Micah. And Micah said to him, where do you come from? He said to him, I am a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to sojourn where I may find a place. And Micah said to him, stay with me, and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, and a suit of clothes, and your living. And the Levite went in. See, it's not just Micah and his family. This is a Levite, one who leads the people, should be leading the people towards God. But instead, he allows this man to lead him away from God. It says the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. And Micah ordained the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and he was in the house of Micah. So he's got 2 priests that this man ordains to. They weren't priests. He wasn't from the line of Aaron. You had to be a Levite, but you also had to be from the tribe of Aaron, or the line of Aaron, to be a priest. So he's going against the word in every which way that you can think of. Lots of religious confusion, and if you've noticed in history, and probably even in our current time, I don't want to bring that up too much, but it happens throughout history, and our current time is not exempt from that. When you have religious confusion, you have confusion on morals and ethics, and really everything else just kind of falls apart. And so that's what's happening right here. The Levite goes in, and notice what Micah says. He ordains him. He doesn't have the authority to ordain anybody to be a priest. God has the authority to do that. But he's got these carved images. I don't know exactly what worship system he's got going on there, but notice what he says in verse 13. Then Micah said, now I know the Lord will prosper me, because I have a Levite as priest. So maybe he knew that there was something off, and maybe what we really need here, people, is a Levite. And if we have a Levite, then then we're going to have some good days. We're going to become prosperous, because the Lord's going to prosper us, because we have a Levite as God commanded. The Levites were to be the priestly tribe. So this is going to be good. This is going to be real good. He's done nothing more than to turn that Levite, lead him away from God. He turns that Levite into a good luck charm. We do that sometimes. We think that we get things confused and think that God's going to bless us because of this, because we know God said this is the way it should be. It's the way He designed it, but we completely miss the context and the purpose behind the reason He designed it that way. That's what this man's doing. He is completely and utterly confused, and he is wandering around in the dark, and he cannot find anything that's going to turn him around. Now, chapter 18, the story continues. It says, in those days, again, there was no king in Israel, and in those days the people of Dan, this is the tribe of Dan, was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in, for until then there was no inheritance among the tribes of Israel had fallen to them. So the people of Dan sent 5 able men, sometime after, obviously after Joshua had gone in. So the people of Dan sent 5 able men from the whole number of their tribe, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to explore it. And they said to them, go and explore the land. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. And when they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. They turned aside and said to him, who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your business here? And he said to them, this is how Micah dealt with me He has hired me, and I have become his priest. They said to him, Inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed. And the priest said to them, Go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. Then the 5 men departed and came up to Laish, and saw the people who were there, and how they lived in security after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth, and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians, and had no dealings with anyone. When they came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, their brothers said to them, What do you report? And they said, Arise, and let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And we do nothing. Do not be slow to go, to enter in and possess the land. As soon as you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people. The land is spacious, for God has given it to your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth. All right, so just because this Levite tells them that this is of God does not mean it's of God. We have to remember that. The Bible is reporting things that are going on. And just because it's in the Bible does not mean that God is approving of it. He's showing us what he disapproves of. These men, they also are confused as to what's actually going on. They don't know who God is. They should. They're Israelites, but they don't know. Israel at this point is lost. As I said, there is no king. There's no standard. I should say there is a standard, but no one's enforcing the standard. So 600 men of the tribe of Dan, armed with weapons of war, set out from Zorah and Eshtaol, and went up and encamped at Kiriath Jearim in Judah. On this account, that place is called Mahanadan to this day. Behold, it is west of Kiriath Jearim. They passed on from there into the hill country of Ephraim, came to the house of Micah. Now, just gives us some details. And the 5 men who had gone to scout out the country of Laish said to their brothers, Do you know that in these houses there are an ephod, household gods, a carved image, and a metal image? Now therefore consider what you will do. And they turned aside there, and came to the house of the young Levite at that home of Micah, and asked him about his welfare. Now the 600 men of the Danites, armed with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance of the gate. And the 5 men who had gone to scout out the land went up and entered, and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, while the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. Now they've stolen something that doesn't belong to them, which shouldn't have been created to begin with. But it appears that they think that if they have this, then this is going to give them victory, as the Ark of the Covenant did when Joshua went over into the land of Canaan and led the Israelites into the promised land. It says, and they said to him, Keep quiet, in verse 19, when they were asked what they were doing. In verse 18, Keep quiet, put your hand on your mouth, and come with us to be us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man, or to be the priest of the tribe of the clan in Israel? They're rebelling against God. And this Levite, he was just going on a trip, but he allowed himself to be drawn astray, or led astray, and the priest's heart was glad. He is lost. Things that are ungodly are now causing him to be pleased. He's become more selfish and looking to himself, looking out for himself. He says he took the ephod and the household gods and the carved image and went along with the people. So they turned and departed, putting the little ones and the livestock and the goods in front of them. And when they had gone a distance from the home of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house were called out. They overtook the people of Dan, and they shouted to the people of Dan, who turned out around and said to Micah, What is the matter with you, that you come with such a company? And he said, You take my gods that I made, and the priest, and go away. And what have I left? How then do you ask me, What is the matter with you? And the people of Dan said to him, Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. This is a mob scene. People of Dan have gone insane in sin. But so is Micah. No one is standing for God in this culture here. Indeed, as the author said, there was no king in Israel. Everyone was doing what was right in his own eyes. So, it says, Then the people of Dan went their way, and Micah saw that they were too strong for him. He turned and went back to his home. But the people of Dan took what Micah had made, and the priests who belonged to him, and they came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword, and burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth Rehob. Then they rebuilt the city and lived in it, and they named the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their ancestor, who was born to Israel. But the name of the city was Laish at first, and the people of Dan set up carved image for themselves. And Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. Read that one more time, verse 30. The people of Dan set up the carved image for themselves, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. Some translations will take the word name Moses, place it with Manasseh. I'm not sure why they do that. Here we even see Moses' family gets caught up in the sin of the Danites. And they do so for a long time. So they set up Micah's carved image that he'd made as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. We're already starting to see Israel dividing against itself. It's setting us up for something much larger, as we will see in the last couple of chapters of the book of Judges. War is coming to Israel, and it is a war that will be fought among themselves, a civil war. And in our own history, we know what happens in civil war. All war is terrible, absolutely horrible. The Civil War has not just strategy and tactics, it also has rage. And what we will see in the end of this book is something absolutely horrible, as we saw in our own Civil War in the 1860s. The people were not following God. There was no peace in Israel because no one actually knew God and his ways, and it nearly brought them to an end. The same is going to be true with us, individually, or family, or nationally, or internationally. The less and less people know God and his ways, and the more they bless sin, the more problems we're going to have, the more violence and destruction we're going to see. Whether it's in our own life or whether it's a global thing. So we want to make sure that we constantly are looking to Jesus. And that no one will say about us in those days there was no king in that person's life. We have a standard, and we have one who enforces it, and that is Jesus Christ, our Messiah. Thank you all for listening this evening. Hope everyone is. Hope you have a good week, and we will see you soon. And look forward to speaking with you again on Wednesday. God bless and bye bye.